Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of our boss fight breakdown series. Today we continue through the natural progress of these boss fights, and we will be taking on the two boss fights that are within the Avengers Tower. Real quick before we jump into today's video, do check to see if you are subscribed to the channel. If you're not, take a moment to do so, as that subscription is free and easy, and there is content coming to you daily from a multitude of different games. And feel free to drop a like on the video if you found this helpful and enjoyable. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into today's boss fights. So the first boss that we encounter is actually towards the end of the Avengers Tower adventure, and that is against Ultron, and specifically the Mind Stone infused and upgraded Ultron. Now, Ultron emulates a lot of attacks that you would see from his drones, with a couple of differences, mainly being they are a little bit souped up in comparison with a lot of his other attacks. Now, right off the bat here, I do just recommend burning down his health as quickly as you can and getting into that second phase, as there are a couple of attacks that differ. He will start off that second phase with his drones that fire lasers across the platform, but they are in straight lines, so you will want to do your best to get out of the line of fire and minimize any damage received there. From that point, anytime you see him with his hand up in that position, he will zoom back out and have some more drones come across, which you can get around a couple of different ways. The first is you can jump over the low-hanging beams, or the second option that I found that works really well is you can do your combat dodge roll through them. He has a couple of other attacks that can prove to be quite annoying. He's got this large energy beam that blasts out across the stage. That's pretty well avoidable, and there's that cue again where you see that he's going to transition over to the sweeping attack from his drones. And like I mentioned, you can combat roll right through those and retain or avoid any damage that you may receive from that. Now, he throws out a couple of punches, and one of the other attacks that you want to be sensitive towards is he does have an attack where he will launch out energy beams from both of his hands, outstretched and slowly spin around in a circle. You can similarly combat roll around those as well. In this third stage, he activates a Mind Stone aura, and the difficult part about that is if you get caught up in the blast, you will temporarily suffer from some inverted controls. As long as you know your way around it, you don't have too much to worry about, to be honest, but it is something to keep in mind. Now, another attack that he does gain access to is that area of effect ground slam attack, which can be a little bit perplexing, and then there's that helix laser attack that I had mentioned a moment ago. Now, anytime you stagger him out, you will see that yellow particle effect appearing in this last stage of the fight, but it's only the times that he charges it up on his own will and fully unleashes it that you really have to be concerned about it and what it means. But all of his attacks are pretty easily telegraphed, so you can find your way around them, and there's that field that you want to be sensitive to and back out of the range of the blast unless you want to A, take some damage, and B, suffer from some inverted controls. Now in this third phase, he does change his Ultron drone attack a little bit, where instead of being straight beams, they do crisscross back and forth, but there are large areas that you can find some refuge in and not have to worry too much. Now, with this particular fight, you do want to burn out as many of your extreme attacks as you can, as they're not going to be super helpful for the next boss fight that immediately follows. And that is the boss fight against Ultimo. Now, Ultimo has a couple of different phases. The first ones are pretty straightforward, and you can't attack him directly, so we will instead focus on the portion of the fight where you are actually taking on Ultimo. And the only way you can deal damage directly to Ultimo in this fight is by using these rooftop cannons, and they are similar to what you would see or what you would expect from the Sandman fight earlier on in this series and in the story quest. Now, you have plenty of time in the regular story quest to get through Ultimo's attacks, or through his health segments, without needing to worry about running out of stagger, and you should break that down into about 4 fights, and each interim between dealing direct damage to Ultimo, a bunch of Ultron drones will be summoned to the roof of this tower, and from there you will need to take them on before being able to deal more damage to Ultimo. Now, most of the attacks do come in from the drones, but something you want to watch out for is anytime Ultimo strikes Ant-Man in a certain manner, he will, and you can see Ant-Man staggered out in the background, you will then see Ultimo turn his gaze towards the top of this tower, and he will unleash an energy beam type attack that can deal massive amounts of damage. So at this stage, we have Ultimo in his vulnerable state again, so you need to make your way over to a cannon. And in the second and subsequent stages of that fight, you'll notice that there are some Ultron drones that crop up in the foreground here. They charge up their energy beam attacks, and before they unleash them, there's a pulse in that light, and as long as you're keeping a mindful eye on that, you can roll away from it without taking any additional damage from the drones and continuing in through the boss fight. And this is that attack that you see from Ultimo where he unleashes his energy beam across the stage, and it does massive amounts of damage, so you want to do everything you can to keep out of that range of fire. Now, I do go ahead and unleash my extreme attack from Dr. Doom there, not because I needed the damage, but because I needed the health, as he was unfortunate enough to be stuck in one of those cross-beam attacks from Ultimo. Now, the opponents do get progressively harder and harder to deal with in terms of staggering out Ultimo, and you get more and more of the mighty enemies that you need to stagger out to deal significant amounts of damage to. But it's something that you're pretty routine with at this stage in the story quest in terms of burning down the different grunt-type enemies that are available. Now, there's several safe zones from this Ultimo energy beam attack, either in between the beams or out on the edges of the top of the tower. So as long as you're paying a mindful eye to it, you really shouldn't have to worry too much about taking unnecessary amounts of damage from that attack. So with the couple final hits here, we do have the Ultron drones taken down for the third time, which leaves Ultimo in his vulnerable state. And we just need to target Ultimo with these rooftop cannons once again. Now, there's not a damage increase that's done by focusing on the head, or if there is, it's very minute, so I recommend just shooting directly at the body so you don't have to worry about reorganizing or altering the line of fire that you throw out. Now, this should be the final wave of attacks that you need to wage out against the Ultron drones, and you might as well use your extreme attacks here to burn through these energy attacks, as it's not too difficult to take them on, and you get in some pretty decent damage against these drones as well, which will just help you get into the final stage of that fight all that much faster. Now, the biggest thing that you want to watch for with these drones is the mighty drones have this purple energy beam that they emit, and you can even take some damage from them when you are just standing next to them, even if you're not in the line of fire or you try attacking into them. So that can be a little bit of a nuisance, but as long as you are able to keep an open eye for those attacks, you really shouldn't have too much to worry about. So burn through as many of your abilities as you can to take on these opponents. And with the final little drone here that's hanging out on the edge, we've got Ultimo into his final stage. And you'll just need to get all of your team members on the cannons, and that will be the end of this fight. And just, again, as long as you combat roll away from the Ultron drones releasing their energy attacks, you really don't have anything to worry about in terms of this fight. It can be a little difficult, but all in all, it's fairly straightforward and you shouldn't have too many issues. So that's going to do it for today's video and our analysis of those boss fights. So if you're enjoying this series, again, feel free to leave a like, and don't forget to comment the boss fights that you particularly enjoyed or the ones that you're struggling with, so I can be sure to take some extra care on those fights when they roll around. So thanks again for watching, and you have yourself an absolutely fantastic rest of your day.